expect to be different from your parents. You know, my parents were born at a time, you know, the oil hardly existed. People didn't buy, you know, all of a sudden it's the 60s, you know, the spaceships, all this stuff. So, yeah, you know, obviously our experiences were really different. Right? And I'm sure that's true between you guys, let's say, and ourselves, and probably amongst you guys too. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's lots of gradation.
I'm not from around here at all. I'm from like the middle of California, a place called Visalia.
We know Visalia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm born and raised there, and so moving to a bigger city where there's
they don't grow oranges.
Yeah. No, there's no grapes, no cows really. It's big, scary.
We're trying to bring the cows back.
Yeah, hopefully.
You know, I think another thing we could point out is that, you know, at least here in the States, we're a very individualistic culture. You know, we're thinking about our own benefits. So it's almost inevitable for every generation to think this way of their parents. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. I just want to live the way I want to. And you look at, like, you know, a collectivist culture, like for China example, where there's a lot more respect for their elders and a lot more connections you'll see. I don't know. That's my point.
Are there any fears?
From Mexican standpoint, especially from parents who were not born here, very traditional. A lot of the issues are very tough to bring about within a father-son relationship. You know, most of the issues are very tight-lipped, very taboo. Especially coming from a very strict Catholic religious background, a lot of the stuff was considered not to be brought up because it might cause a drift between parents and their child.
So what kind of issues are you talking about?
Sex, drugs, alcohol, you name it. And most people would rather talk about it. No, it's better to keep it hush, to not talk about it. And I think that at the very end, that can be very, I don't know.
They do that in the Midwest too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, a lot.
The philosophy of it, as long as they don't know about it, they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. Yeah, exactly.
I think a good thing to do, just to give some context, because I think I'm probably the youngest one here. How old are you? I'm 22.
That's a good question. I'm 22. I'll be 23 in January.
30.
Does that help?
No, I just turned it.
Okay.
I'm 30.
30.
I'm 30.
If you feel comfortable talking about it.
Will you feel me, baby? When I'm 60.
So you're the youngest of the group, I guess.
By a little bit, yeah.
I'm 66.
And then the communication also has changed since back then. Back then it was all newspaper. Nothing. The rumors, the gossip, everything just traveled very slowly, if it ever got to anybody. Probably just a neighbor or two. But now communication is so widespread, and every artery and media just easily brings out your business like that, and most people don't like to, they'd rather just not expose themselves no more, because Facebook and MySpace and all of them are just bringing out everybody's,
your opinions are so accessible.
Do all you guys have Facebook pages?
I do.
Yeah.
Right? We all.
Really on them?
I fought it for a long time, actually.
It's like, really, what do you mean? Did you see like anything?
Well, I guess, most of the people that we know, at some point you feel inclined to use Facebook, but not to the world that I kind of, started posting things that I see people posting.
It's too open?
Well, it's or sometimes just too, nobody, how many people want to know when you go to the bathroom? Some people, there's just too much trivia on there. I think it becomes really kind of almost
staticky white noise.
Yeah.
The internet.
Yeah, so much kind of stuff. I can't imagine that it would be that important. Think about how in the old days when people used to write diaries, most of them would start a diary and they'd maybe do it for a month, and then they would get bored, and they would just not do it anymore. And then there are a few exceptions. They made these huge diaries over years, and they became famous diaries. Right, exactly. And they were valuable because you got to, because you forget from day to day what goes on.
But they weren't writing anything else.
The problem, I think, with the internet, and I've been involved with this. It was invented, but is that it's too easy just to put everything up. And most of it is just not that interesting. So it becomes, you hit it right there when you said white noise. It becomes, white is the combination of all colors. So it becomes nothing.
You don't know what's pertinent.
You become, then we have to work on filters. So, attention is a good filter. You just kind of ignore it,
I know exactly what you're talking about because I work for this company called the Meltwater Press. I'm a research analyst. So what I do is we're a media company, but we're like an internet media company. What we do is we find out what reporters are reporting on what feeds, what they're saying, and all outlets, TV, newspaper, everything. And I primarily use the internet to get these research. So I know exactly what static on the internet is because most of my job is rifling through useless posts of people's opinions to see if one guy's still writing on, technology, or if it's moved from the Washington Times. But we brought up newspapers earlier, and that's sort of a new thing that's happening is sort of the dying of that medium. Newspapers are sort of being phased out, and
Juan?
Like Juan said earlier, that's how news was passed when you were young. Is that fair to say?
They had invented TV, but...
Well, yeah. But newspapers were more prevalent, is what I mean.
And the radio.
Well, newspapers were more prevalent than they are now. And they certainly... But, what I really don't see, I see lots of talk about new media and all this stuff, and communication, we're talking about the various new phone systems and all these kinds of things. But communications with a little c, I'm not really sure that, we have the devices, we have the electronic means, but I have got no sense whatsoever that people are more profoundly informed now than they were 50 years ago when a lot of people read the New York Times. Had some analytic stuff, had professional journalists, all criticisms of the lot. You may have, it takes time, energy, it takes money and resources to be a decent reporter, for the most part.
Yeah, right.
And there's no model out there as far as I can see right now. Everybody keeping blogs and doing all this stuff, where are they getting their raw data? How are we going to learn about, the front lines in Afghanistan? I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go out there. You need this whole structure to support that. And right now, people don't want to pay for that kind of structure. So I'm just not sure. I'm trying to keep an open mind, but I got to admit that so far, I'm not really confident that it's where it's going.
Another issue technologies like the internet brings up is that I find I expect everything to happen instantly, and that's, one of the problems with online journalism is that people want stuff to happen, to get their news a lot quicker as it's happening, and that's what online journalism does. They don't want to wait for the newspaper the next day or wait for the evening news or radio report, they just want it now. And I find I do that with everything now. I want traffic to move quicker. I want my food to cook quicker on the microwave. I don't know. Those are probably not the best examples, but yeah, I find that technology is doing that to us as it gets more advanced.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. And who does the media benefit? Is it benefiting old generational, intergenerational groups, or is it just one in particular?
No, because if you take into account this neighborhood. One of the things we belong to a community group for the improvement of the experience. And one of the things that you have a problem with is outreach, because not everybody is online. As a matter of fact, I would say the majority of people in this neighborhood are not online. And that isn't how you reach them with facts or ideas. So we always run into these, particularly like nonprofits, and they're run, and this is not to be a slam or anything, but they're run by young people who are very excited about all of the technology and they want to do this. But every time they want to put something out, they send out an email or a blast, and they think, and then they're surprised when 3 people show up. You know, when we had a conference on violence after several really awful things happened here, and we did it the old-fashioned way.
You shake someone's hands and you introduce yourself and you invite somebody.
Exactly, and we
and that's
went
how you build trust, and that's how the barriers break down.
We went out with police and did block by block, and when and you know, even with all of that, I mean, after doing that over hundreds and hundreds, we got maybe 2 to, depending on who you talk to, 200 to 400 people to show up, which was a lot more than with the email blast. So some things, I think you get overlooked. You get so excited by the technology and wrapped up in the technology, and Robert kind of touched on that.
I think both.
That
You
you're
both.
not looking.
You need both. It's funny how all the mayors use this little district to set up their little campaign posts. If Excelsior's ever mentioned, except when the mayors run for office, they use all these bankrupt, foreclosed companies.
The rents are cheap too. But they do set up.
Do you think there's like any prejudices or stereotypes in between intergenerational groups intergenerational groups that you guys have come across, or that anyone has experienced?
I have a little experience. I live up by the park here, and there's get a lot of activity with young lovers and people who want to do a J or something. And so I end up interacting because I'm a property owner up there.
Where's this?
Up on the end of Burroughs Street, McLaren Park.
McLaren Park, sure.
Yeah, and there's a little street. The end of Burroughs is all like a one-lane, woodsy, little wild place, and
we have
wild things happen.
friends that live on LeGrand, and they dead end in the park too.
Yeah, so
They have
a lot of
your problems.
activity with there's a little bit of stuff, and I find I get stereotyped a great deal because I walk out because the music's too loud or they're yelling too loud at 1 a.m. or something, and then yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, you know, and sometimes very facetiously, but over the years I've actually found that it's gotten much better. The younger people coming now up are much more homogeneous, much more able to communicate than they were 10, 15 years ago when there was just such a divide.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, TV, movies, internet, exposure to...
It's also a different generation.
I don't know. Astrology?
Generation X,
Astrology.
Generation Y, and then and then, I don't know, what is it?
I don't know which one I fit into. I'm just here.
I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. I bet you their revolts are just as much as bad as our revolts. It's just a different name they put to it.
We invented the don't trust anyone over 30.
Yeah, I mean, it's been happening for ages.
I mean, that is fun.
The white picket fences and the beavers is pretty much over.
Oh, it never was.
Yeah.
Well, that's the funny part. That was all a myth anyway. It was more like an ideal to make everybody decide this is what they want.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that it was conscious effort to prey upon people's emotions. No, it was conscious propaganda. It was. I mean, there was certainly an element of propaganda.
Well, let's put it, no, but the people who wrote it knew that it was mythology. They didn't write it and present it as though this is what was really out there.
It's television. I mean, 2.5 minutes.
For entertainment.
Yeah.
It's not?
There you go. Right. See what you did?
Charlie Sheen doesn't know that.
Breaking down. is funny is I just realized this, how we've set up the table. There's actually a literal divide between
Where
ages.
people are sitting,
Young on one side.
Choice.
I was trying to think.
Why
who
don't
was
you
the
guys?
age?
we're talking at each other.
Well,
So that's right. Why did you guys choose to sit together?
because
Well, I came late. I apologize.
you didn't have
Traffic,
much
so I didn't have a choice.
because
And they're a couple.
we've been sitting side by side for 35 years.
I mean, this is probably a generational thing, always with the lady, right?
Do you guys think that why are we segregated in ages? Like, why is it that the young ones only hang out with the young ones, but don't really integrate with older ones, and the older ones don't really integrate with the younger
No,
ones?
we don't live that way. I got to say that, and I think that it's something that I really enjoy. We just we got to dinner with some folks, and Paulo came along.
Shane was there, and he was like 34.
Do you think that's the norm? Sort of take that experience and say, well,
I have no idea.
It's probably not the norm, but on the other hand, I don't think that's something particularly. Occasionally you'll have like an 80-year-old guy that fangs somebody who's 20, but I'd say that's probably the exception now, and it's probably was the exception 50, 60 years ago. But when I think about it, one thing is a little different. Like when I was a kid, I think things changed. There was a period there where they didn't change remotely as rapidly as they have now. But I mean, obviously there's been like a big technological change, but I'm not sure if it's social changes that make those things, more compressed now. That if you've got siblings, if it's like if you have younger siblings, it's faster for them than it was for you, or is it? I'm not sure. Because all these things, we're dealing with all this media verbiage, which probably doesn't correspond a hell of a lot to the sociological realities. Because lots of people live pretty traditional ways. Right, there's different kinds of telephones, but they relate to their parents much the way their grandparents would have related to their parents.
There's a lot of divide, like a thin line that's invisible that talks about social usefulness. So, when they say young, they're considered like not useful because of the fact that they're not wise enough, they're not older, they need to be taken care of. And then once you get to an older age, then it comes up, well, you're no longer needed, you're no longer able, you're slow, or all of these things. So why?
That's so wrong.
Careful. We have our hands on the buttons.
We got all the money.
The old money.
And I've read on blogs that people younger people are so afraid of just getting to an older age when there's actually no on-print, tangible way of actually telling someone this is at this age you're considered old, or at this age you're considered a senior or an elder, whichever way you want to describe with them. It's untangible, but yet the youth is so afraid of it.
Are you afraid of getting old?
I'm afraid of bodily getting old. Sort of the age around this age.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of becoming useless. I've seen my parents break down over the years. Like my dad has a bum knee now that he never had. He has a fat back.
Well, getting old is not for sissies, that's for sure.
What was that?
Getting old is not for sissies.
But I wouldn't say that I'm scared of getting old. I'm scared of my body breaking down.
Well, that's
I think that's a real fear. I think that's a real fear.
But how does that translate? I mean, what do you feel you won't be able to do?
I feel that I won't be able to do what I do now. I mean, I use my hands a lot. They're very fine motor skills, and I see my grandparents. They can't type. They have swollen joints. They have arthritis. They can't type for long periods of time. And my job requires that I type for 8 hours a fine motor skills, fine motor function. That really distresses me because I have very strong land presence, very strong technological presence. So I couldn't do that anymore. That's a large portion of my life gone. I mean, that's not going to happen for a good many years. So,
How do you feel about his comments?
Well, I can understand, you know. I don't know. I never did. I mean, I never worried about it. Never worried about it. I didn't.
what does it keep me up?
No, I'm
When
just
I think
saying,
about it, I'm like, ooh.
you know, but when things started to go wrong, I did feel somewhat betrayed. You know, I never had any problems with pain and stuff in my body. And then when I started getting arthritis, I started getting upset. Now?
Yeah, we all went around the table and said how old
Oh yeah, we did. We all had to do.
No,
We all had to do
15. I don't go that way.
We don't do that.
63.
63.
You're actually younger than us.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit younger. A little bit
Okay,
younger.
good.
You're the youngest of the old guys.
You know, I get scared sometimes, and I think it's once I did this research project is when I finally realized that my fears were being fed by everything that was conditioning me to feel afraid of reaching a wisdom age. I was being conditioned by like all of those commercials that tell you should be painting your hair, that you should be taking pills, that you should be taking away the wrinkles, that you should, and you can't reach this age. So I was so afraid of it, of reaching a point where I would feel useless to my daughter, or if I ever got to remarry, or so I started to actually be conditioned into believing society telling me at some point, at this point I'm useful, at this point I'm not, at this point I am, at this point I'm not, but it's not real.
So you thought the media was inculcating?
I think so.
What age did that start at? When you were, beginning to be useless.
I think it was until I was started to reach an age once I became a mother. It's when it kicked in. Because I started to see friends that would be able to go out, or that didn't have to deal with having to parent, or when I would go to school and be seen as somebody like not valued at school because I have a child, and students that go to school don't have children, should not have children. So when on the media, if I ever thought about remarrying, then I started to think that if I didn't do it by a certain age, then I was probably going to end up having gray hair and wrinkles, and the new person would not want me anymore, or something like that. So, and then I worked as a student, being 30 years old. Once I get out, a lady said, well, once you turn 40, no one's going to want to hire you. So I'm like, wait, does that mean I'm only going to have like 8 more years of work and then that's it? So I started to fit into that, other people's fears of that, and then my own.
And I think it's particularly for women that's tough, because that happens a lot. You know, nobody thinks twice when some guy gets to be, 70 years old and he marries some 20-year-old and has a bunch of kids. You know, they think, oh, gee, that's great. But if you do the reverse, and nobody would ever believe, that kind of thing.
I think that those fears are super real.
But we had a friend that just got married, though, and he was what?
Ray, you remember that?
Yeah.
Got married, so this hope.
Thanks.
He's never been married before. He hasn't lived with a woman for 40 years, and he just got married. And he had an uncle who
He met her online?
well, he actually probably
communicated online?
Probably did.
Probably had a picture of a younger guy and they met like, oh, cute.
She's no spring chicken. She's very sweet.
Terrible thing. She's not great either. It's like,
just I mean she's not young. She's not in the 20s though. So I thought, we thought that was great. Why not?
So we're talking about getting old. One of the things that, I don't know, like, what your background is in terms of what you were doing, like, in 1965. One of the things when I speak about this, like, with friends and stuff like that, in those years, I think we kind of assumed the world really wasn't going to be around. I mean, none of us really thought to be old, right? Because, the Second World War, it wasn't that far, and all these
we grew up in the
bombs
Cold War, so we figured that,
huge explosions,
destroyed at any moment.
How are they not going to use these things? It's never happened before. Every time it started, it only ended one way, and this way it was going to end,
So, that's true. A lot of us didn't grow up with the idea that we had to worry about.
It's not entirely different from our generation. I mean, we're always worried, is global warming real? Is that going to come into effect?
Only in this country do they believe it's not real.
I mean, the term global warming is climate change. But yeah, you're right. It's purely an American denial.
The rest of the world looks like a bunch of stupid.
How about economy? Do you guys think that we are worried as you guys are about economy, and do we think that we are as worried as they are about the economy or about?
I have not felt the ill effects of this economy. I work, I go to school, I pay my rent, and I do everything, and it hasn't gotten that much harder for me. Maybe that's just white male privilege or something like that. Maybe it's that I work my butt off and try to, make ends meet in any way I can, but I really have felt any of that. I've heard all the rhetoric, and I've seen, but I haven't seen one of my friends get fired. I've seen a couple of my friends get jobs, get better apartments, have upward mobility, and not just the white male. So I don't think it's, at least in my view, in my limited worldview, I haven't seen the ill effects of it. I understand that it is happening. Some people are feeling it. I don't know.
How do you relate to Occupy Wall Street?
I don't agree with their methods, but I can get behind some of the ideas. I've done quite a bit of research on exactly what's going on, but the Occupy idea to me just seems completely distasteful. It seems like almost a joke. When I see like people in suits in a building drinking like cocktails, taking pictures of the people who are occupying Wall Street, it's a joke to them. They don't care. It's a completely useless. Once winter hits, they're gonna leave. It's gonna be too cold. You can't stay on your tent in the middle of downtown New York.
I kind of agree with you, but what I was really hitting for was it's being billed by some media as young people coming out, graduating, not being able to find work, saying that nothing's happening, and this is why it's not happening, because the money's frozen near the top.
I've done a whole lot of statistical analysis on that, but I don't feel the ill effects. And I'm admitting that there is some bias. I'm a young white male with a lot of young white male friends, but I don't see it affecting not my parents, not my parents' friends, not from a wide cross-section of the U.S. I just don't see it.
Well, there's 9% unemployment affecting someone.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that I have not seen it in my own life. That is my point. I'm saying that I'm sure it's happening, but I have not seen it. So I'm withholding judgment really until.
Well, I'm a 25-year builder. And it really, whoa, what a beautiful 20-year skyrocket up, and a lot of people, bought, sold, and made a bunch of money. Our generation really got into it, and it's a hot thing, and a lot of the people are now, the rug pulled out from them.
Especially the last one.
Yeah,
Problem
people
with
who
both,
worked,
it's always the last person to buy who gets
I know some people in San Francisco and many people outside of San Francisco who have lost, and they're just in poverty.
Yeah.
And they worked hard and they had good things and they accumulated.
As I said, I just haven't seen it myself. Is my point. So I can't really pass judgment on something I have.
Hasn't affected the world.
It hasn't affected me. It hasn't affected me in the least.
Has it affected me? No, it hasn't affected me also. So I can't really speak how much on.
How about just in terms of tuition?
In terms of tuition, I have to take out student loans, but I've had to take out student loans since I started school. It really has not changed how I act in the world, how I react to changes. It hasn't affected me. And I say yes because it may still. It may be in ways that I'm not seeing. It may be that I just have such a limited view of things that I'm not seeing how it
Yeah, no, I understand totally that you're in a situation that's not really affecting you.
Yeah, so.
I wonder how is retirement. They talk a lot about it, but
My dad retired when he was 49, and he's 61 now, but the problem was he was relying on stocks, and it seemed like a good idea at the time, but not so much anymore. I am lucky enough that he's pretty much covering my expenses for school, but he's very unhappy how the tuition keeps going up and there are less classes available.
That is one way that it's hard to take classes. Maybe that's the one way.
Well, so they made it now very difficult to get out from under student loans. You can't get out without bankruptcy or anything like that.
Yeah.
So whatever you do rack up over your time will be with you until totally pay it off.
and they take it out of, from what I heard, your Social Security payments. Like if you get a check from the government.
There's a time limit. Last I heard, the latest change is if you haven't repaid it in 25 years or something like that, they'll cancel.
Well, that would be good.
I've also heard that claiming bankruptcy, filing for bankruptcy doesn't
That's been true for quite a while.
Yeah, they changed that. There were quite a few people that were doing that to get out. I mean, if you go to medical school or something like that, you rack up not thousands, hundreds of thousands.
I went to school that's basically very similar to state in New York City. My tuition was $15.
How much was your tuition?
$15.
15 or 15?
15.
That's community college tuition now.
Not even anymore.
Community college.
When I started, it
It's
was
like 26.
A unit. I'm talking about that was the tuition.
That was
it.
And that was for how many units?
That was for however many units you chose to pay.
Wow.
Yeah.
But this is the time right after
But in relative, you were earning like 5 cents an hour, so it comes out to be the same thing as today.
But even adjusting for inflation, I can't see $15 becoming $40.
Well, part of the thing was that there was a belief in some sense of community, and there was a sense of community obligations, and not laying everything on the potential, pay. That there was a wider community benefit of having a well-educated.
That was it. There was a lot of that had to do, at least from my perspective, here was with the Cold War and the thing with, the race with Russia and all that, and the fact they got Sputnik up there first. So there was a big emphasis on education here, and the feeling that it was part of our duty to have a country that was well educated and that's kind of gone away. It's more like, everybody's sort of free enterprise now. Everybody's going to turn their school into a little profit center or something.
Where do you think that barrier happened, though? Where do you think why that barrier was put up? The communication of
people's attitudes obviously changed. I think about it in some ways. It's a natural kind of evolution, but like World War II really changed this country in that before World War II, you had to be a part of the elite and very wealthy in order to even go to a university or college. And what happened was they made the GI Bill, and so all these soldiers coming back who would have been stuck behind a plow, basically, could go to college, and they became doctors and lawyers and everything. And then when they got to be middle-aged and old, they said, I bought myself up by my bootstraps, and I don't want to pay no taxes. These people can do it themselves. They forgot how they got there. There's a lot of that. A lot of kind of self-denial or, self-serving kind of memories.
In a little more political context. After World War II, World War II was such a bump for this country. I remember as a kid, and it was such we landed on top. We're just, God's gift to the world. We're a nation of winners, and part of the pride was we have the best educated people. We have the best manufacturing. We have the best transportation system. We have the best political system. We've just proved it. And education really was big and large. And she said, I totally agree. It was elites, and all of a sudden the whole education system and home ownership was opened up to soldiers, all the people. And I think that was a whole democratic thing that came out. The Democrats were in power for so long, all through there. I mean, Eisenhower was sort of you consider a Democrat today. But to me, when I always look at this giant milestone as Ronald Reagan and that Republican Revolution, and all of a sudden this whole education, healthcare, infrastructure, that whole pride and the whole this is our together went away, and it was all me, mine, back to some sort of elite.
Read my list.
Taking back power and saying we don't want to pay these taxes. We want unfettered marketplace. So I see that as in my life as the dividing line.
But I mean, in some ways, like people who did buy houses really profited from that because they have low taxes now. In New York, you got to watch out because you could find a very cheap house, but the taxes could be $30,000 a year, and which is a small income that you'd have to maintain. So, but what they didn't do when they did that was find any alternative funding, because property tax is what was funding the school. When I went to UC, my parents paid for my tuition, but they were paying $380 for a quarter, and that was room and board and tuition.
How do you think we can break those barriers?
Is it 6?
Yeah, it's 6:30.
6:30, yeah. Yeah, shouldn't have to feed it.
You don't have to feed it.
For an hour, but I mean...
No,
After 6.
Yeah, so they don't go anymore.
How do you think we can break those barriers of communication to go back into looking at what's important for all generations to be able to come up as a society? How can we break those barriers?
Maybe, are we talking still politically or?
Anyway.
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah. I think that's maybe a loaded question. That presumes that how we live today is somehow more flawed than how we lived in the past. I would caution people to stop looking at the world as the past, rose-colored glasses. It wasn't. Like we said before, the 50s wasn't this golden generation. The 60s wasn't this complete revolution of peace and love and happiness. It was a terribly violent time. Black power movement, things of that nature. We look almost at the world as the past with rose-colored glasses. We say, well, we need to get back to this golden past. Well, that never existed. We need to start thinking about what we can do now.
So wait a second, I'm just curious. So you're saying that like among like your peers, it's not uncommon to have people think of the 60s as golden time?
Well, maybe not the 60s. Yeah, I have.
People,
Yes, I have a lot of hippie friends who strive to sort of.
Hippie friends, I mean young hippies?
Yes.
Nouveau hippies?
Yes, nouveau riche hippies who deny their father's very big bank accounts and become Rust, something like that. No, but they look on the 60s, golden period.
Because, occasionally you see the concert in the park.
It's like, what is this? No, we're not fighting for this.
That's a great point, and I've experienced it when I was young, and I experience it now with friends, and I'm sure I do it, is that in old communication you're referring to this huge body of the past histories and comparing everything now to that, where you don't, you just see it on TV and you have no real idea what's going on. So we tend to be very negative. Seniors tend to be pretty negative because everything looks like it's changing for the worse. Basically because we're changing for the worse, not because the world's changing for the worse.
But I would argue that the world's largely the same. More things have remained the same than have changed.
On one hand, we're more vulnerable because we're not going to make it, like she said, who's going to want the gray hair? So how am I going to make a living once on my hands?
Exactly. Like I was saying, I work in the digital world, so if I ever get arthritis in my fingers, with my job.
So any changes in the world are scary in a sense to old people.
Well, I do. I have one idea that I don't know how to implement it. It's not really political, but if we could just have more, have discussion, have a political discussion, or have a that's honesty, that's honest, that's about the actual problems and actual solutions, and not be locked into this thing of sound bites and slogans and, let's go for that one because he's cute and he has this great phrase.
That's a big shoulder.
if we had media that didn't lie to people, or politicians who didn't lie to people, who keep telling them that they can have their cake and eat it too, basically. You don't have to pay any taxes, and you can have a war without any consequence, and that kind of thing. That there's this like this la-la land, and you wonder how these wise people continue to believe these things. But on the other hand, they can't get elected unless somebody talks to people really, honestly. They come to expect people are going to say these things, tell them that they can have their cake and eat it too. Because if they don't say that, they won't get elected.
There's a lot of truth in that, but was there ever a time when politicians weren't sort of liars?
I cannot.
Well,
We've had better.
We've had leads.
A cup of coffee, a table, and we can delegate different ideas. We don't have to be on each other's throats. We can prove to everybody that we can have a decent conversation, and every opinion gets thrown out on the table, and we can still respect each other for what we believe in.
But what does it do, though? What is just having a conversation?
It breaks down the barrier between generational gap, which is the main question being asked, and how we can learn to trust each other, know each other better, besides the technology, Facebook media way, and get to know each other face to face. And
that's real.
And I've known Juan Luis.
I still think the trust between the communication between parents is very, very, very important, because if you don't have that, then the kids are going to go look for somebody else for that void they don't have. Who is it going to be? What, alcohol? The gangbanger who says we can take you in because you're our family now? Some authority is going to be in your life, whether you like it or not.
Keep a social animal.
Yeah.
Very important. How we operate. No, I had a point. I totally forgot it. I ate that.
That's a sign.
Yeah,
Welcome to the
You have no idea.
You denied them.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
I'm not old, I'm just young.
couldn't help it.
Yeah, we have a Kodak moment with a Kodak camera.
Bumper sticker, I'll put it in my truck. I'm just dumb.
What's the?
I put it on my truck, dye my hair, and then put a bumper sticker on it. I'm not old, I'm just dumb.
It's funny because I've actually met Bill today, and I've known Robert and Sonia. I have Kyle in my class, I have Michael, and I've known Juan. But even though I've had relationships with all of you, this is the first time that I've actually heard, all of the stuff that we discussed that I probably would not have heard if I just had a regular one-on-one conversation. Like at this table, like I learned a lot more about each one of you individually, but as a whole about ideas of where some of those barriers have come and gone, and that I probably would not have gotten in just the regular everyday interactions without this discussion today. So that was very interesting how it actually works.
Yeah, I appreciate this discussion a lot too, because I have no friends over the age of 40, and those are my parents' friends. You know, I talk to my grandparents every once in a while, but I never have in-depth conversations with them. It's always very personal, like, how you doing? Love you.
How about like at work?
My company is a startup company.
So everybody's
the oldest
45?
person who works there is, I think, 30. He's the boss, and it's really like once somebody makes a sale, so like we work right next to the sales department and the community relations department. So every time somebody makes a sale, they'll ring a bell. Everybody gets up, gives them a high five. They like play darts and stuff in the office. Yeah.
Are you guys hiring? They're looking for jobs.
And I barely got hired, so.
See what happens? You guys are too old for this job. You guys can't throw darts.
No,
It's ageism, that's what it is.
The CEO of it's a multinational company that's actually based in Norway.
Well, see, personally, I
30 and
this.
60 now.
In the place that I grew up, there were a range of ages, and people, we had like a handball court, and people who were 70 and people who were 15 used to play handball, and you talked. And then there was, because it was a fairly socially conscious place. Yeah, we used to have like discussion groups, like we had like, you know, some really left-wing people. They really like to engage young people. I mean, it was kind of guided, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, you know, free love, but don't touch my daughter. And, you know, obviously a certain kind of socialism, but not anarchism, you know. But in other words, there was more. And in my working life, I always worked with a wide variety of ages, and I really learned. During the Vietnam era, I got out of graduate school, and I wanted to stay in San Francisco. And so I got a job for the federal government. This was a joke. I was a draft dodger, right? And the first place I looked for the job, because I love the architecture, was the Presidio, right? And then I went to work for this other
Draft
government.
dodger who's in love with military architecture.
Yeah, I love Paris. So I went to work with all these guys that were, because the particular organization, were World War II vets, and a lot of them were career military. Because what happened in World War II was a lot of poor guys went into the military because there was no work, you know. And there's another, you know, halfway between time, man. You know, I felt like I was this cool guy, you know, that really, you know, these guys were a bunch of asshole schmucks. And my friends were cool. We all, you know, everybody else in the world was kind of an asshole. Johnson was an asshole. Everybody was an asshole, right? And then I started working with these guys, and, you know, they had kids. Some of the kids were close to my age, and they were so happy to have the opportunity to talk to somebody. They didn't talk to their kids. They couldn't talk to their kids. And what I ultimately came to feel was that these were really wonderful people, and they were far more open than me and my peers were, because we had schmucks, you know. I mean, they support Vietnam, you know, they're assholes. You know, they're selfish, narrow-minded people. And, you know, as we got into it, it was all this, whoa, you know, these are really good people. You know, I can understand why these are people, the government fucking saved them. And you know, they would have starved to death in the 1930s. The government had to intervene. The Army gave them opportunities like you couldn't believe. Like one guy was a Colonel Marine. And one day he's talking to me, he said, you know, Dad, if I hadn't gone into Marine Corps, the only thing I would have seen
It's one of the tools that I see my fellow activists using all the time, and it really does work. You sort of accept the labels that people put on you, and then say, well, it's actually not. These labels don't mean what you think they mean. So I definitely believe in the sort of consciousness raising ideas that you're talking about, broadening your horizons, realizing that these schmucks in the military aren't assholes. They're actually real people that are really good. They're people with something to say at work.
I mean, there are some of them.
Yes, I'll tell you, there are assholes. I'll cop to that. But yeah, it's definitely true for me, but the majority of people, they don't want to learn. I don't feel that they want to learn. I mean, it would be great if they did, but I just don't see it in my day-to-day life.
So from this discussion that we've had, I'm going to go around with the camera to each one of you, and in one word, describe the conversation that we just had, right? Is that it?
Yeah, one
word. Or more than
one and a half.
One sentence will be good.
That's one of those, you know, group leader kind of. Yeah.
Ready? Who wants to start? No, do you want to start?
We can start it out.
Go ahead.
It was good.
Very worthwhile.
Enjoyable.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was fun.
Civil.
That was my second choice.
Yeah, they have to do that.
That is something.
All right, and now for you guys have to describe this half of the table. Have to describe with one word, with one sentence, elders for us. So if you could describe with one sentence, how would you describe them?
Describe one sentence that
Describe their age group. How would you describe it?
Not 10 minutes, just let me.
Oh, okay. And you guys have to do the same about them.
A good one.
I cannot tell a lie.
And then you guys have to do the same thing about their age group. Who wants to start? What side?
I volunteer that.
Generally, they talk less.
They talk less?
Talk less.
Who talks less?
We do.
Well, he's a little quiet.
I think I talk too much.
Well, I think they're surprisingly open.
Yeah, I don't really see a conversational generational divide here at all. You know, just circumstances that just ordinarily you don't sit down with someone who's 40 years or 50 years younger with you and have a conversation out of the blue.
Can you come back to me?
Just sort of this discussion in general, or
About how do you perceive them? Like, how do you
these three people?
Yes, it's their age group.
Just their age group.
I can answer for them. We're cool.
Yeah.
You know.
They're cool dudes. They're cool dudes.
Modest.
I see. Experience. So that is a lot of what I'm going to say. Is very experienced. They have an outlook that I don't share, and that's a good thing. A good thing that I get to talk to them and sort of broaden my horizons, to raise my consciousness, like I was saying at the end of the discussion. I don't get the chance to do that a lot, and to my detriment.
I would say that I found out that we have more in common than what I thought.
This conversation kind of reminds me of the philosophy, you know, everyone has a story to tell, and you can be surprised by how much you can learn just by listening to other people's stories. And, you know, I think that was what this was just a lot about, listening to everyone's stories, because everyone tells their story a little bit differently. They see all these topics a little bit differently. So, you know, this whole generational gap, one thing you can say is putting yourself in someone else's shoes, or just the easier way is just to listen to people, you know. I think that's what today was all about.
Well, it was great having coffee and tea with you guys. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming down and helping us with our project.
Yeah. No problem.